Namaste and welcome to Live, Love, Engage. I am Gloria Grace Rand, and today I am delighted to have a really cool guest on the program who is coming to
Thank
us
you.
actually all the way from France. I think this is, well, no, my second. I think I did have someone from Switzerland once actually on the show. So you're my
Mm,
second international guest since I'm based in the United States, for those of you who
yes.
may not be aware. But we're going to be talking about how to manage change. And 2020 has been all about change this year. So I want to welcome David Hennessey. He is a person who 20 years ago actually created a holistic personal development program called the Wonder Technique
Hmm.
that has continued to evolve over the years. He has shared this technique at hundreds of workshops and seminars, and even recently created an online personal development program. He's got formal training in psychology and nutrition. He's traveled over 20 countries and lived in 3 of them long term. And his goal is to give the fundamental tools of personal development to everyone on the planet, which I think is a really, really good goal to have. So, because we can all use a little personal development from time to time.
Indeed.
So welcome, David, to Live, Love,
Thank you,
Engage.
Gloria Grace. Thank you. And hello to everybody who's participating by taking some of your time and listening into us. I
Yes,
really
well,
appreciate that in advance.
yes, I do. Well, I'm trying to think where to start because I know we were actually before we get um, officially started to record, we were talking about change, but I think I'd rather maybe back up a little bit
Sure.
and just have you tell us a little bit more about yourself because you've definitely had an interesting life so far, and living in 3 different or no 20 countries is amazing, or you've traveled to 20 countries, lived
Well,
in
yes.
3,
Yeah.
so which is more than I can say. I've traveled to 3 different countries so far.
Well,
So,
we all have our own journey. Like life
yeah.
really is a journey. And I think everything that I've had, like everybody else who's listening and yourself, Gloria Grace, the journey that we have in our lives brings us, if we're paying attention to it, brings us many, many different gifts.
Mm,
And each one of the things, like we've talked about a few moments ago, and everybody that's experienced this year has dealt with a lot of change. But change can be seen as positive and seen as negative, depending upon your frame of reference. Now, a little bit of my history, 3 countries. I was born in Ireland.
mm,
And when I was a teenager, I moved to Canada. And 10 years ago, I moved to France.
mm.
So it's not mathematically one third, one third, one third, but it's getting there.
Yeah.
So and each culture is very different. Even though in Ireland and Canada the same language, essentially without the accent,
Right.
because the Irish accent is definitely not the same as the Canadian,
Yeah.
but the cultures are not the same. And then I came to France without speaking the language, and that's like
Mm.
a hammer to the head when it comes to
Oh, wow.
uh, having to learn a new language, because then you've got to process everything differently. The culture is different.
Mm.
But I came, there was a reason behind that. There was a family situation. My mother-in-law was really ill, and we moved very spontaneously. Like it was 2009 in January. In April, we were already moved, all of us, the children, to France.
Mm.
So I don't recommend that to people. That's a lot of change rapidly, and a lot of stuff came after that.
Mm.
But my life taught me a lot about how to manage change. And it wasn't just by going through the change. And this is what I really hope to share with everybody that's listening.
Mm.
A lot of it is about preparing ahead of time.
Mm.
Now, I picked up many years ago a phrase, and it's actually Gaelic, and I don't speak very much Gaelic. I can speak French right now. My French is good
Yeah.
enough that I can argue with people. So that's kind of like a rating scale.
Oh, good.
I
Okay.
argue with people in French because it would, passionately, not negatively. But
Okay.
when it comes to Gaelic, there's one phrase that always stuck in my mind, because when I was in school in Ireland, they were teaching us Gaelic, and I was not listening like many students. But there's a phrase called, if I pronounce it correctly, be olive. And be olive is a phrase that means in English, be prepared.
Mm.
And this tunes in to actually how I frame resilience and
Mm-hmm.
how we manage change. Resilience is actually preparing ahead of time. You don't bounce back. You already have the things in place and
Right.
they're available. It's like if your car breaks down on the road and you have a spare tire in the trunk or a toolbox in the trunk, you have the ability to bounce back quickly and get to your appointment.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have any tools, or you're going to try and find a tool at that moment in time, chances are you're going to get a lot of stress.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And this is what I've learned over time is that I keep acquiring new skills and keep on compounding habits that build upon each other to make things easier. Sometimes, you know what, life has presented me with, you know, you got to learn a language.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, you know, when you have to learn something new, and I will just throw this out because it kind of pops up in my mind, is that if there's something you need to learn new and it's not really ideal, like the French language is not easy to learn, and it's very, I don't write French, but I can speak French. But what I did was how I started in learning French was I found the motivation for it.
Mm,
Okay. This
that's
is the key
important.
to learning anything new.
Yes.
So it's really, really important. Now, if somebody is dealing with change in their life, you have to decide, do I have the motivation to take this? Like my motivation for the French language is because my children, between them, always spoke in French together.
Yeah.
Their mom always spoke in French with them. I always spoke with English, so they were naturally bilingual.
Right.
But I was outside the conversation. And for those of you listening who are parents, do you
Mhm.
imagine not being able to understand when your children are talking together?
Yeah, you don't want that.
You don't want that. Even if they're sharing the little gems from their school day about how
Yeah,
well it was, or, you know, their favorite book they read or movie they saw, you've
right.
no idea.
Yeah.
Well, you have a fragmented idea. So that
Mhm.
motivated me to learn the French language. And what I did is I put myself out there in conversation with other people.
Mhm.
And even though it was challenging, our brains are incredible when we give them the opportunity. You start to build up a vocabulary over
Mhm.
time.
Yeah,
It's like anything, we start to build that ability.
yeah.
So go ahead if I see you have a
Yeah,
question.
there's so much there that,
Okay,
that I want to unpack, and because
sure.
different things were coming to me. I mean,
Yeah.
and I'll start with the be prepared, because I'm a former Girl Scout, and just like the
Ah,
Boy
that's the,
Scouts and the Girl
yes.
Scouts, we were taught to
Ah,
be prepared,
yes.
and it is important in being able to, before you're going to be able to do anything, to have an idea of what you might need in order to accomplish a certain goal, and to be able to, whether that is getting some sort of either concrete physical things like you mentioned the example with the car, or maybe it is being mentally prepared to do something.
Yes. Yes, indeed. And, you know, I mean, even the physical things, sometimes people say, oh, it'll never happen. Like, you know, we're doing this podcast and I'm speaking from my home office. And
Mhm.
if you look in here, you will see there is a fire extinguisher in my home. Most people
Mhm.
don't have a fire extinguisher. I've never had a fire.
Mhm.
But it's like I always say to people, if you carry an umbrella, it never rains.
Right.
It's almost like it's because you anticipate it, you don't need to
Exactly.
deal with it.
Yeah.
And it may sound to some of the good people that are listening that, David, you know what? All these things I might have to learn, but it's about learning things gradually over time.
Yeah.
It's not, and in that way, it's not so stressful.
Hmm.
So with you, for example, you mentioned about the scouts and that you probably learn certain tools, and if you want to share, I don't know if you do, but you learn certain skills, maybe orientation.
Yeah, yep, absolutely.
With
How to build a
orientation,
fire, how to build a
yes.
campfire, and then I was able to. Later, I actually became a Girl Scout leader. So for
Okay,
my daughter, and so then I was able to then pass on that knowledge to the girls in the troop, because I had learned it as a kid. So and I think that's also important, is when you can learn something and then to be able to pass that on to other people
yes,
too. And it helps you
yes,
learn even more. It helps you, I think, to master those skills sometimes if you are then teaching it to someone else, which
yes.
maybe your kids were even indirectly teaching you French as well, because you were having to practice. So
Yes, yes, they still laugh at me when I speak in French, but
yeah,
that's just because, you know,
well,
father sons, things
yeah.
like that. But that's part of humor in life. But you mentioned something there that's really important, is that when you teach something, you become proficient, more proficient at it.
Mhm.
And my goal with the Wonder Technique as a holistic personal development program is to make things as simple as possible,
Mm.
so that it's very reteachable. And part of that way is that I know there's lots of wonderful information that exists in the world about personal development, but
Mhm.
most of it, for most people, it's hard to integrate because it's too much information and it's not
Mm.
getting a smaller amount. So I like to use little acronyms or create new ways as mnemonic devices to help people remember.
Mm-hmm.
So in fact, right before we're having this conversation today, Gloria Grace, I was thinking about, is there another idea that I could pop up here that would be fresh, like we say, fresh off the print, right?
Right,
Out of the
right.
printer or straight out of the oven? And I came up with some ideas
Oh,
that
great.
I've never used before,
Mm,
but they're ways of integrating information.
awesome.
Okay,
Do
so
share.
yes, I will. And there's and when I have these ideas, they somehow come to me, and then I can kind of reverse engineer them as to where they come from. Because
Mm,
when manage change, when we want to be, let's use it positively, how we manage change based upon our capacity to be resilient, we have to do certain things. We have to plant the seed.
mm.
Okay. And a seed, another name for a seed is a germ. It's something that will grow from it. In fact, in French, sometimes they call it the germ, the center of the plant. And another name that we have for a seed inside of a grape is the word pip.
Mm.
Okay. And here's the acronym I came up with:
Yeah.
PIP, plan in place. You
Ah,
have a plan in place, a strategy, an approach to help buffer things before they happen. Now, it's not like that's going to change your life by saying plan in place, but it's a way of you saying in your mind, okay, when I want to prepare for something, what do I need to do? I need to have a plan in place.
right.
Okay. I shared on another podcast 2-3 days ago another idea. Was some people always say, how do I remember what's more important when I have needs and wants in my life?
Mm.
Okay. And this is another really fresh acronym that's like straight out of the printing press of David's mind. And hopefully those listening will find it at least interesting, or maybe just plain humorous, right? Is that we look at our needs and we look at our wants. Okay. Our need would be, for example, is that we need to have food to support ourselves and support our family.
Right.
It's primary. A want would be that, we want to go outside to a big restaurant and have a big meal.
Right.
That's a want.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if people ever wonder where do we prioritize this, it's your needs over your wants.
Yes.
Okay. So then you got the letter N for needs, O for over, W for wants. You've got the word NOW, which means what do you need to do now? You need to focus on your needs over your wants.
Ah,
Okay.
I like that
Uh,
one.
you like that?
That's definitely a keeper. That's to really build on. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'm a bit of an acronym machine here, but I will say this to people listening. The reason why I started playing with acronyms
Mm-hmm.
was because when I was young, I was very, very shy, and I
Mm.
didn't know how to interact with people. There's a long part of my history where I just was a person very reclusive in that way.
Mm.
But when I started creating the Wonder Technique back in the late 90s, and my mom had gone through 2 bouts of cancer,
Mm.
and I started to try and formulate the information in my mind to share with people, because people were wondering, like, I have to, full disclosure, I'm not the reason why my mom is still alive right now, but I definitely contributed to it because I helped her manage the stress. And
Mm.
she knows that. But lots of wonderful doctors were working with her. But
Sure.
I think she's responsible for the fact that people started hearing about, I had this ability to simplify complex things.
Mm.
And then I ended up right away starting to speak to groups.
Mm.
And I was terrified. Like, what do you mean I got to, what? But
Yeah.
I was open to it.
Yes.
And I will say this to those people who are listening or thinking, it might sound slightly off topic for change, but it's the idea that if there's really something you want to do in your life,
Mm-hmm.
please do it.
Yeah.
And I feel so strongly about my work that I feel that if I didn't do it, I would be negligent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because I think that everybody has something inside of them that the world needs. And it may be just that you're a wonderful listener. It
Right.
doesn't matter what it is,
Yeah.
but the world needs to see that because you are an individual expression of that. And
Mm.
I learned in the 90s that I had this ability. I kind of knew a little bit ahead of time, but I had the ability to simplify things. And when I got out in front of an audience, I was like a fire hose of information. I was too much info,
Yeah. Yeah. I
too
bet
much.
you've done that.
And it was like, people just like, I love what he's saying, but I can't keep. So I started building acronyms to calm myself down,
Mm.
to keep me on track, and
Yeah.
then to make it easier for the audience to remember. So like here, needs over wants. We look at the now idea. And this will tie into a couple of things. I know some people listening probably say, David, I already do that. But I sense that there's a lot of people that actually don't do this. And it surprises me. During the period that we're going through in the world right now, which COVID is still feel quite active in a number of countries, is that a lot of people got hit financially.
Right.
Because they weren't ready.
Yeah.
But this would not be the first time that we've been said we need to save a little bit of money.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And with all due respect to everybody, I've had bad financial moments in my life because things happened. Like, I mean, when I moved to France, I didn't speak the language. I couldn't get work. I had 2 children to support. So I burned through all the savings that I had. I have to be honest about it, from Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really difficult for me to get work at first. And what happens is that even though I had savings, but I was able to make it through there because there was at least a certain buffer in time because I had savings. Now, when this situation arrived for a lot of people, I have a framework that's really simple. Every time I earn money, I put aside 10%. It's that easy.
Yeah.
It's really that easy.
Mm-hmm.
And that builds up over time. And it's like making a habit. It compounds over time.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact is not to have the money that you're saving up for something. And I'm not trying to direct anybody what they should do with their money. It's up to them. But it gives you something. I heard years ago, Dr. Oz actually said, so I want to make sure I source anything and see where it came. He said he called it your peace of mind account.
Mm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're starting a new business, if you're doing a new venture in your life and you're moving, but you have some money just in case, it helps you manage change better.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, years ago, I actually interviewed the author of a book called Profit First. His name is Mike Michalowicz. And he talks essentially sort of the same idea. In fact, he actually recommends having several different accounts so that, excuse me, so that you can set aside, some money, like you said, to have just in case, sort of that permanent wealth. But then you also have profit account, because too many business owners, they just tend to like put all the money that they make right back into the business without saving some of that to actually enjoy.
Yes.
Part of the reason of being in business is that you can have money to, do something fun with. So you need to.
Well, you're exactly right. And in fact, I do.
Yeah.
I separate, like I always, there's the 10% and then I scrape off some money that's put aside for like vacation or different things.
Sure.
So, and what's amazing is over time it becomes a habit. And it relates to all the different things. Like for myself in my life, part of managing stress and managing change, it relates to many dimensions of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people will talk about mindfulness nowadays. It's a very hot topic, should we say, very trendy. But I will say one thing is that I do pay a lot of attention to my mind, what goes in and how I frame my day. And if we have time, I can talk about that. But I'm also very aware, and I want to share this with the listeners to kind of underline it, is that how much you sleep, how you eat, how much fresh air you get, the time you spend with family and friends, your hydration, there's my water bottle beside me, all those different things tie into your ability to actually be mindful and meditate. Because the food that we eat, our body uses to generate the neurotransmitters that are inside our brain that are stabilizing our cells. The blood sugar is not all over the place. You've got your hypoglycemic levels and you stabilize things. If you're super tired, how can you expect yourself to sit and be quiet? You're going to fall asleep because your body needs it. And sleep is super important.
Oh, yeah.
So this is why the Wonder Technique is really holistic in a sense. I look at how everything comes together. And when people contact me, they usually there's chunks missing. Like somebody could be a really good physically fit person, but there's other things that they don't have in harmony, and things start to fall apart, and they wonder why.
Yeah.
And then again, you can take apart, we're talking about change here on the online programs I created. There's ones on how to improve your focus and concentration. Of course, I mentioned already how to sleep well and wake up energized. These are all parts of, but somebody who indulges in taking part in one of those courses will see how things, what I will say, and please correct me if it's not the right phrase, they cross-pollinate, they affect each other.
Okay, yeah.
your focus is actually dependent on your ability to be alert and not fatigued and hydrated. And if you want to wake up and be energized in the morning, a little tip I share is like, go outside and get natural light, because natural light turns off the melatonin in your body, which is the system that turns on your desire to go to sleep. So if you work from home right now, you still need to get outside, and it doesn't have to be blazing sunshine. Okay, it's the natural light. It's not an incandescent light bulb or LED light or something like that. So there's physiological things that we need that exist in nature. So I know I'm expanding here.
Well, it's good. No, because it sounds like it sounds like it's essentially it's a way to be able to, you're incorporating sort of like mind, body, and spirit. It sounds like in this technique to really, because if one of these, you know, is out of whack, then it's like, well, it's like a three-legged stool. If you knock one of them out, then the stool is going to fall over. So if you can have each of them working in their prime condition or as best you can, then the whole is going to be better than the parts, right?
For sure. And actually, to support the analogy you just gave, is that the idea that, for example, when I started the Wonder Technique, it was just scientific information was coming out to support the importance of drinking water, being hydrated. The fact that some people were finding that it's not the only reason, but that they could relieve back pain by drinking water because the discs inside their body require to have biological water inside. Like it's starting to come out. At that time, there was pretty much no information about sleep, although I was talking to people about sleep was really valuable because I've been reading a lot of stuff that isn't in the common domain. But only now there's a lot of information about that. And I said to somebody yesterday when I was talking with a gentleman, we were talking about personal development, and I said to him, I think that one of the things we're going to recognize, and it might be another 10, 20 years, hopefully sooner, is one of the biggest healing things that we have is silence. Yes. Being in silence.
Expand on that a little bit. So
okay, I will expand on that, and I'll use an analogy that I created that existed forever. Music. If music had no space between the notes, all there would be is noise.
That's true.
And it's the silence that helps make the music.
Right.
And we use silence when we use it correctly all the time when we're listening to people. Silence is also shutting off of external inputs, whether it be digital, whether it be vocal, whether it be even music. Okay, as much as we enjoy music, especially words with music with lyrics in that songs, you want to tune out. And this is part of the fact of why people, when me personally, I'm a big hiker, so I spend a lot of time in nature. I love being outside, and that's actually really beneficial because nature is very inspiring. And for those of you who don't spend much time in nature, I highly recommend to you, like if I was a doctor, I would write a prescription saying go outside. and what happens is that when some people, they talk about like you have a shower and you relax and you have an idea that happens. But part of it is because you're actually, hopefully, unless you brought an idea into your mind and you're ruminating over it, you're in silence. Some people bring a radio to the shower, and I would say, don't do that. Give yourself a chance to be quiet. And it's part of training the mind. But I mentioned the whole idea about being in silence. Like there's a very beautiful thing that anybody that's listening in relationship, if you can just sit in silence with a person that's close to you, whether it's your husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, daughter, mother, and just listen, you can make extraordinary progress in that relationship. And in addition, I had a gentleman tell me when he was interviewing me the other day, he sat beside a friend of his dad, if I remember this correctly, who was really ill, and he didn't know what to say to him at the hospital. But he just sat there in quiet and held his hand. And then when he felt the right moment was to leave, I think he said it was about 30 minutes he left. And later on, the dad of his friend passed the message on to him to say that he really appreciated that he didn't sit there talking. He just sat there and was present.
Yeah, absolutely.
So silence can be very healing.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that we don't often think about that, but I know I've talked with other people who recommend, even like someone, a business owner who she said she'll spend just a couple hours, like either I don't remember if it was like once a week or at least once a month, and where she just sits and doesn't do anything, doesn't work on her business. She's just sitting and quiet, and
Okay.
it's not meditating. It's just sitting, like you said, just sitting in the silence and
Yeah.
just being,
Yeah.
because that really does help later for creative thoughts to come through, because you've given your brain a little relax, or a time to relax, a time to just sort of take a break because
Yeah.
there's so much stimulation out there.
It's so very true, Gloria Grace. And what happened for me, like when this acronym that I mentioned to you, PIP, now
Right.
this happened, I was just sitting. I was not expecting an idea to come. I said to myself, if it happens, it happens. Like if
Hmm.
I can something extra to come up,
Right.
I'm open to the opportunity to listen.
Yeah.
And the silence about, this is why some people, they struggle with the idea of some version of meditation or mindfulness. But if
Hmm.
you go for a walk outside and you just look at the plants,
Hmm.
you're,
Yeah.
you're not like trying to detail them, because you know what? We're the ones who named the plants. The
Yeah.
plants didn't have any names, okay?
It's true.
So when some people say, do you know the name of the plant? I'll say, no, but it's beautiful, right?
Yeah.
We identify it.
Right.
So you can just admire what exists outside,
Hmm.
and you're observing everything, but it takes you out of the inside conversation. That if the inside conversation at times is not so positive,
Right.
you shift out of that and you
Hmm.
actually relax everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
silence is important. So
Yes. Yes. They say silence is golden. I
yes,
remember learning that as a child, and it's something I think that we need to start paying more attention to, and hopefully we will, as you say, as maybe more studies are done about it. Because I
yes.
think also a lot of people sometimes they think that, well, you mentioned mindfulness in particular, but
Mhm.
people think they have to meditate for, and they've got to just clear their mind and be quiet for hours on end, but it doesn't have to be that regimented. Like you said, just going out. I make time to go out every day. I'm either going for a walk or I'm riding my bike. Now,
Mhm.
granted, I have been lately listening to an audiobook while I'm doing that, um, but once I'm done with a book, I'll probably go back to again, just giving myself a break, and I'll probably just not have anything
Yeah.
in my ears so that I can just listen to nature's sounds. And and which actually just reminded me too, that was the other interesting thing that came about because of the pandemic. I noticed people were commenting that they felt like they were hearing nature more, because they
Mm.
weren't hearing some of the other sounds of industry and things like that. So
Yes, actually, I know from in the French village, unfortunately, as people started moving around more, I could smell the change in this air. You
mm,
could smell the vehicles again, and you
yeah.
could no longer hear the birds as much as you could before.
Hmm.
So yeah, I saw the difference.
Yeah.
That's almost the difference that you can feel when you go up into the mountains and you can feel how fresh the air is, and then you descend down into a city. I
Hmm.
mean,
Yeah.
we need to have, or urbanism is a way of living that's probably better because you have a concentration of the people and
Right.
services. Not everything spread all over the place. I'm
Hmm.
not an urban planner, but I understand that. But you can see, you can feel the difference. I think your listeners, your viewers, they understand what I'm saying. People, why do we feel exhilarated when we spend time by the sea, when we spend
Hmm.
time by that?
Right.
We don't necessarily need to decode it and know the science. We just need to recognize, what, it feels better,
Yeah.
right? And if it
Exactly.
feels better, go with it, is the way I look at it. I mean, I can get into deep science for why water,
Right.
why sleep, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Start talking about chronotypes, start talking about all kinds of different things. But at the main level, and this is what you mentioned at the beginning, I
Hmm.
want to bring things to people so that everybody has an understanding of the fundamentals of health and well-being and personal development, and they can move on. In fact, my ultimate goal is to make myself unemployed, meaning people don't need what I have
Right.
because things are figured out. And
Yeah.
I was really quite saddened, because maybe I was naive, that as we went through so much stuff lately, a lot of people that I taught were quite centered during this process fell off
Mm.
center.
Mm.
And I'm super grateful. Hopefully this comes quite positively, but it is for me that in the storm that we've gone through, I felt really quite centered.
Mm.
Not that I didn't have friends that were ill, not that I didn't know people that passed away,
Mhm.
but because of my history, because I've worked on this for such a long time, and I'm not just talking about personal development, I've been practicing it in my own life.
Mm.
And for your listeners, just to give them perspective, because I know a lot of times you hear people and you say, yeah, okay, but what happened to him?
Mhm.
Um, to give you an idea, like we might have talked about this before, but when we've had conversations in the past, Gloria Grace, but what happened for me when I moved to France, not only was the language transition in that, but I moved because my mother-in-law was ill, and
Mm.
one of my greatest mentors in my life was my dad. And when I left Canada, where he was living, and I moved to France, he started to get ill. And in fact, he died when I was on the plane going back to Canada.
Oh, darn.
And this is, I mean, you know what? I love my dad dearly, and great things he brought to my life. But that was a hill I had to surpass in my own mind and accept.
Mhm.
And that was in 2011. So it was about a year and a half after I moved to France.
Mm.
In March, no, pardon me, in April 2012, it happened towards the end, it was September 2011, my dad died. In April 2012, I found my mother-in-law dying, and
Mm.
she died. So a lot of things compounded and things got really difficult. I wasn't going through all the stuff here because I don't like talking about this because it's like it brings up a lot of oh my gosh, but I was in a rock climbing accident and I fell and I couldn't walk for 6 months. Like literally I couldn't walk. So
Mm.
I've recovered from all those different experiences that happened within a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I really believe that how I managed to get through them was what we started this conversation with, is I had plans in place.
Mm.
Because there were certain things that I already knew, okay, for my healing and my state of mind and my mental well-being,
Mhm.
I needed to make sure I kept on taking care of my diet, take
Right.
care of my family, of course, spend time with
Mhm.
family and friends. I needed to be properly hydrated. I needed to pay attention to sleeping. All those things I used. Everybody will get hit by something in their life at some point in time.
Mm.
And how prepared you are will make it easier for you to be able to surpass it.
Mm.
And I really hope that for everybody. This is why I'm a bit fanatical about wanting to have people have the tools, because
Mm.
I don't want people to go through, they don't need to go through the pain and suffering. They really, if you can avoid it, please,
Right.
if you can save some money, if you can, you don't need to wait till it's a tragedy.
Yeah.
We don't need this. It's too
Yeah.
sad. It's too hard,
Yep.
and hard on yourself and hard on people around you. So
Mhm.
this is why I'm out there to do my best to help.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I my sympathies, and I can relate because I went through um my own situation where my sister came down with cancer, and that was in 2015,
Mm.
and then passed away 18 months later.
Oof.
And it was tough because she lived far away from me too, so I was traveling back and forth to visit her.
Yeah.
And one of the things that got me through it was because I was I had a meditation practice. I was taking good care of my own health, physical health, and eating well at the time. And because I had that foundation, it helped me then to be able to focus more of my attention on serving her. And
Yes.
so that plan in place, yeah, it's
Yes.
definitely
Yes.
important. And because life is definitely, it's always going to throw curves, and we're always going to be facing change.
We
And
are.
yeah,
Don't
so
don't don't let anybody kid themselves that they're, expect the unexpected.
right, right.
And if you can prepare for the unexpected without, there's no need to be, as people say, oh, don't be paranoid. It's true.
Yeah.
Just prepare, right? And for example, when we know that the world we live in is not a world where in the past people had the same sort of employment forever, it's
Right.
always good to expand your skill set. And if you wanted something to expand your skill set into, expand it into something that you enjoy,
Yes.
and expand it into something that you know that you enjoy, that people will actually value as well.
Yeah.
That's it, because then you can generate a revenue from it.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, as you hear many people, if it's a pain point for somebody else and you have had the experience and you've found a way over it,
Mm-hmm.
that's things to pay attention to. So we can learn from the experience that we've had. And it can be a lot of fun too. I mean, I had somebody contact me today and say, you know what, I had a really good job, pardon me. It didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think I'm going to have to take a job I don't want to take. And I'm not going to feel good about this because I've always wanted to follow my dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, I just got that message about an hour before podcast, so I haven't responded to it yet. So my goal is to get that person to have a short conversation with me. But in general, for the listeners who would say, well, what would David respond to that? My response would be, if you have to take a job, quote unquote, a job where it's not ideal for you,
Right.
one of the ways that you can nourish your spirit is to continue doing other things on the side that you love.
Yes.
Because it will be required of you at times to do work, and I've had this experience,
Yeah.
that it's not your passion.
Right.
But if you can do that work and you can be grateful for that work, that at least you have it, if it's nourishing
Mm-hmm.
yourself and your family, because you know what,
Yeah.
no matter what the work is, if it's paying some sort of your bills and you got your food on the table, it has a benefit. And that's
Absolutely.
something I begin and end my day with. I'm sure Gloria Grace, you do the same thing. You're
Mm-hmm.
grateful for what you have. And it doesn't
Right.
have to be, I've got a brand new house, got a brand new car, brand new relationship.
Yeah.
No, it can be, I have air to breathe. I've got, my
Mm-hmm.
hair is healthy. My skin
Yeah.
is whatever. It doesn't matter.
Exactly. Yep.
I look at the simple things,
Mm-hmm. Me too.
and I always go back to what do I have, not what do I want to have. This is like,
Mm-hmm.
what is now as against where you anticipate. I'm all game for living the life you want, but I also find that when you are very joyful and happy with what you have, there's something very powerful about that. You seem to attract more of what you want. Will you agree with
Absolutely.
me on
Oh,
this?
absolutely. 100%.
Talk to me more about
Yes.
your feeling on this. What
I
I need
have,
to while we're talking.
yes, I've spoken
Tell
on
me.
this. I've written about it. Yeah. The more that
Yes.
you have to be, the more that you're grateful, the more ungrateful you are, the more you tend to have to be grateful for. And
Mm-hmm.
it just attracts, because frankly, the opposite is true too. If you are always
Exactly.
complaining, then you tend to find things to complain about, because I love my mother, God rest her soul, but she could complain a lot. And then
Yeah.
she seemed to have a lot to complain about, instead of
Yes.
focusing so much on the awesome things that she did have, which she did have a lot of great stuff too.
Yes.
So,
Yes. And that's, what, that's really interesting, because probably everybody listening knows somebody
mm-hmm.
who complains a lot
Yeah.
about their life. And you say, wow, they've all these great things they have, and yet they never talk about it.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to bring to people's attention, if I may, the danger zone that I had the experience of. When I came to France and all these things were happening,
Mm-hmm.
I have wonderful friends and I'm very grateful for them. And they listened to me a lot when I shared about what was going on. And some of my friends, David, one of those things would have been enough to knock me off center. Like, never mind if my dad passed away, never mind finding my mother-in-law, like,
Yeah.
and so, but I was sharing those things. And this is what I want to bring people's attention. When you vocalize about things that are not so great in your life, you actually tend to emotionally relive the experience.
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm.
And this is very dangerous. So I
Yeah.
actually I didn't realize this right away.
Yeah.
But when things kept on continually being more and more challenging, I was like, what's going on here? And I don't know what happened, but I realized that I need to just stop talking about those things
Yeah.
and start just talking, even if it's in small amounts, what I've been grateful for. Because when I started walking again, I could walk, maybe around halfway around the block. That's not
Mm-hmm.
relative to anybody. It's a distance, but
Yeah.
I couldn't, I was so grateful. Every day now,
Yeah.
I still go for a walk in celebration of the fact that I
That
can
you're
walk.
walking. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Oh, I know. Yeah.
Painlessly, I mean, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of stuff I've done now because I'm recovered from that. I'm even back with the rock climbing,
Oh.
and I'm not wild and crazy. It's, I'm safe in my mind, because the accident that happened was a freak thing that happened when I had the accident. But what is that, when you focus on the great things, and you know what, and you anticipate them as well. I have to say that this morning when I wrote down in my journal, I wrote ahead of time that this podcast was going to go well, because I believed it would. And I
Right.
believe that has an impact on it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You
Yeah,
know?
because it's putting you in that mind frame of expecting good things. And
Yes.
so, because Now, I know some people are probably thinking, well, okay, great, I can go around expecting good things, but bad things are going to happen. Yes, that's probably, in fact, it is so.
It is normal.
And because you are doing things like preparing or you're still expecting, I think you can handle, I find, or at least I found in my instance, that I can handle those bad things more easily because I can I can understand that it's okay, you know what? Yeah, it sucks, but this too shall pass. And I
Yeah.
can get through it.
You know
So
what? I'm going to support you on this, and it's like within reaching distance. I'm going to show you for those who are able to see. In my hand here, I have a package of papers. Now, what is that? Okay, what this is related to managing things that happen that are out of your control. I ordered a rim for my car, a new rim inside the tire. Okay,
right.
and it was delivered to my home, but in fact, it wasn't delivered to my home. I don't know where it was delivered to. Someone else signed for it and took it. This happened two
Oh
days ago.
shoot. Oh,
Yeah. So, and somebody basically stole it. Delivery company
right. Yeah.
delivered it to another home, and they signed for it. Okay.
Yeah.
That paperwork is related to the fact that I have to create a small file to
Yeah.
prove it wasn't me that actually got it.
Yeah.
But what happened when this happened, because of the framework that I've worked on over
Yeah.
time, I was like, something good is going to come from this. That's how I looked at it.
Yeah.
What can I learn from this? Because you know what?
Right.
It will all work out. It's not the end of the world. Yes,
Mhm.
the rim was essentially stolen, but the company says they will resend it to me as long as I can send them documents and
Right.
affidavit that I didn't, yeah, etc. So, and some of my time is lost in that process, but I look at it, something I will learn from this experience.
Yeah.
And even if it's just that it gave me a little something to share with you because it resonated with,
Right.
gave something, right?
Yeah.
All those
Yeah.
little challenges, when you blow a tire or something happens, you don't get accepted for a job.
Mhm.
Somebody, what, if I tell you, you know what, I have wonderful children, and before I met the mother of my children, I met other ladies, and there's plenty of other ladies that I would have met who turned me down. Okay.
Mhm.
But if they hadn't turned
Yeah.
me down, I would never have met, I mean, you
Right.
can see the strength.
Exactly.
We don't necessarily see that at this moment in time.
Right. Right.
But you actually, when you start to frame things about, okay, well, if that didn't happen, then something better will happen. Exactly what you
Mhm.
said.
Yeah.
You take a lot of stress out of your life.
Yeah.
And I really do believe that. And life has taught me so many times to pay attention to how I viewed things.
Yeah.
I mean, you break a plate, you
Yeah.
get angry, or do you decide, you know what, I better pick the pieces up because A, I'm going to walk on it, or one of the children's going to walk on it, then we're going to have something worse to deal with.
Right.
Okay, pick the pieces up.
Yeah.
So you learn how to respond, and
Yeah.
it's a better way. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
I'm simplifying it, but maybe that's my goal, right?
That's
So,
true. Well, absolutely. And maybe it's time to get new dishes because
yeah,
it's probably time. They were
yeah. This is very true.
so
Exactly.
fortunate. How fortunate that it broke.
Yes. Yeah. This is the way of looking at it.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Um, well, we could, probably keep talking and talking all day, but and it's been wonderful. But I would like to have you share with our listeners
okay.
how people can find out more about you and especially the Wonder Technique, so
Okay.
they can maybe if they're curious about what that acronym stands for, they're going to have to sign up with you, I think, and find
Yeah.
out. Right?
Well, they can contact me. Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's many more things. If you took the Wonder Technique as just an idea, and you can hang all these other things from it, as I mentioned
Mhm.
before. Part of the Wonder Technique is about the importance of relationships and our state of mind. And so you can it's really a system that you can put into your mind and attach things. Like when learning languages, for example, this is a
Mhm.
little sidebar. I believe that I learned the French language because I could attach things in my mind. When a person said a lemon was a citron, if I'm pronouncing
Mhm.
it correctly in French, I
Right.
could attach the two things together. But if somebody had just said the word Citroën to me, I
Mhm.
would have taught the car Citroën.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Exactly. My brain would
That's
be
true.
like, it's not getting it. What's going on here?
Yeah.
So I needed to have something to attach. So a framework, we really like to attach things in frameworks
Mm.
and see how they come together. But in terms of people finding me, my home online is thewondertechnique.com, spelled as it sounds. So THEWONDER technique.com. Everything is attached to that. All the videos I have on YouTube and to value people's time, they're 2-3 minute videos. So little valuable snippets of information are in there, and you can listen to it and you can pick up an idea. There's also articles there. And as you mentioned before, before Gloria Grace, was that I created an online personal development program because I've done a lot of conference work. I've spoken at hundreds of conferences, but I realized not only with the world that we're in is that I'm not accessible to everybody in person, and I love meeting people in person. And I'm really enjoying, we're having this conversation through, video conferencing, but it's not possible for me to connect with everybody. So I created the online personal development program to give people easy access. This program currently has 8 courses inside of it, and you join as a monthly member, and you stay as long as you want. You take as many courses as you want. So it's like, there's not like you decide what you want to do on your timeline. So there's audio and video. So, and there's a workbook as well for every course. So I really do my very best, and I hope people listening can see where I'm coming from, to make things as adaptable as possible for other people. Still give them the value and the information, but make it so that it's easy to access. That's why I created the online course. So the wondertechnique.com is the best way. You can find me through David Hennessey on YouTube, but you'll find a link on that to find the videos. So it's all kind of just right there. And I will say, oops, don't forget, if anybody wants to go to the website, there is some gifts I give to new people who join the community. There's no charge. There's a book, 2 booklets, and then I'll have to tell you, there's these, we might have mentioned this before, there's mini motivational cards that I created.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Yes. And these were inspired by my wonderful dad. He always had lots of quotes. And I made these little cards that you can print out a sheet, cut them out, and you can, you know what, you can leave them on the bus, leave them in an Uber, a taxi, whatever, put them in your spouse's purse, your children's school bag, and they're all written like positive, notices. I'm courageous. I feel great. I feel energetic. And and they're colorful as well. So anybody who pops on the website, they can see that instantly. I will send them to them. I'm happy to do that.
Yes, I thank you for mentioning those, because I was able to get some of those myself, and they are awesome. And I do love that idea of and I haven't done that yet, so I'm going to have to cut them up. But yeah, to leave them, because you never know what effect you're going to have on someone's day, because maybe they really needed that positive message right then. And then for you to share that could be just what they needed to just really brighten their day. So it's awesome that you created those. So.
Yeah. Thanks to my dad for inspiring it. So they're available at no charge. Somebody goes on there. I mean, it's not just a little booklet. It's a lot of tools that they can just keep and share. Awesome. So thank you very much for this time. I really appreciate it. And I value the time for everybody that's listening, as I like to say, if you're listening right now, you're taking a little piece of your life to share with us. And I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you so much for being here and taking time out of your evening to be with us. And I really appreciate it. And so again, for everyone who's listening, just make sure you can go to liveloveengagepodcast.com, and you'll be able to get all the information that David had. I will have all that in the show notes. And until next time, I, as always, encourage you to go out and live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically.
Wonderfully.